phenomenal presentation on OER. This is actually really exciting. I really like OERs. Right, so digital content making school affordable. I find this topic to be pretty important. I just finished my degree in digital equity and the difference between access versus use.
Oh, I want to read your dissertation.
Oh, I have it literally right there. I just picked it up from UGS.
Email it to me. Thank you very much.
I just picked it up from UGS.
I might just read 1 or 2 chapters.
4 and 5. That's all we need. 4 and 5. But, you know, the difference between access versus use, right, and how important it is to actually be able to access the information, and then that is going to coincidentally increase use. So, I am a qualitative person. I don't like numbers. I know, but everybody else is really into numbers. So for the number people, I put your numbers here. And for the qualitative people, we have a ton of words. So everybody should be happy. Now, 46%. So VitalSource is one of the largest suppliers of textbooks. And they've converted into supplying a lot of digital books also. They ended up doing this study because they were realizing that there really was not a financial difference. They weren't getting more money because they had automatically converted to digital books. And they thought that the conversion would actually promote, you know, the more sales, and that's not what happened. So 46% of students surveyed indicated that the cost of the textbook has a direct impact on their financial situations. So we're looking at meals, right? We're looking at formulas. We're looking at diapers. We're looking at rent, at car payments. So these students actually admitted that they will delay paying something else that has a critical life impact if they have to buy a textbook. And when we consider that a car payment is maybe like $300 and something, and so is a textbook, it actually begins to make sense. Now, if you're taking one class, the $300 may not be impactful. But if you're taking 2, 3 courses, now you're almost, you know, $1,000 and above just on textbooks that you're going to use for a few weeks. So 46% delayed and 42% didn't even buy a book. As an instructor, I find that extremely worrisome, right? Because if about half my students are not reading the content, are not being exposed to the content, what type of experiences can we really have in the classroom? Now, the scarier part is that if half my students don't have a book, and then they're really depending on Google if the course is online. And Google is a scary place for people who do not know content, right? So they have no way of discriminating what is true versus what is false if they don't have a foundation. And that foundation should be the content that we give them in the class. So of those who did purchase a book, 8 out of 10 actually waited and postponed buying the book until the semester had begun. And in all transparency, I had a class earlier this week, and I'm like, okay, we don't know anything about a particular theory. I'm like, has anybody even bought the book? Nobody had the book. Nobody had the book, and we are like week 6. So it's interesting. We were doing like a lot of group work, I was giving them a lot of content up to that point, but once it was actually up to them, I realized that nobody even had the book. So we need to start thinking about, like, as you know, as instructors, as designers, what is it that we can actually do? The scarier part was that in 2017, it was only 28% of students, and then 2016, it was 27% of students. So we're looking at almost a 20% increase, right, in students not buying textbooks. Well, from 16 to 17, but from 17 to 18, it was 40-something. Yeah. So, you know, 1% is really irrelevant if we're looking at, you know, 17 to 16. It's who answered. But, I mean, that jump, right, from 2000 to 18, that's like a little bit frightening. And then 6 out of 10 students who did not purchase a book said that they didn't do so directly because of financial reasons. So, Is it a thing? And it obviously is a thing because it keeps increasing, right? The number of students who aren't buying books is getting higher and higher and higher. So it's not just a fluke. It's not our bad luck as instructors that we're getting the class that students are not getting their books. But 2/3 out of students who did not purchase the book said if they did have access to course materials, they would have felt confident and performed better. And a lot of times when the students are coming into our environment, it's not so much their capability, because obviously they're capable, they made it this far, but it's the self-efficacy that they have, and it's the mental mode in which they're operating in. So if a student already feels that there's a deficiency, and that their deficiency is because they don't know the content, that is going to create a barrier between them and actually learning. Whatever they actually can learn without the textbook. And then 5 out of 6 respondents indicated that if the textbooks were lower cost, they would have been more inclined to access them. But this is where the Vital Source survey came in. More so than the digital access, they're really looking at cost. So digital access is something more so for convenience, and then the cost is more so for actually attaining the material. Okay, so now that we know this is an increasing trend, right? And now that we know that students are actually getting bolder and deciding to just completely forego the textbook, what is it that we can do to provide them with course materials? So, we go through this, a couple of times a year. We talk about like, what is it that we can do? And they really are good ideas because we see the impact directly on the students. I have taken classes in my older years where the instructor is requiring 6 books and they're all required. And if we touch half of one, it's a good semester. So we need to think about and be more cognizant of what it is that we are actually requiring students to get. So we can talk to the publisher and we can get a price list. And it really shouldn't matter to us if they have a paper, if they have a loose leaf, if they have, a digital version, but kind of like, get those prices and make them available to the students and have the students determine which one it is that they want to pursue, the digital or, the hardcover. We can also customize. So the publisher lets us make these like packets, right? And we can tell them that we don't need chapter 2 through 6, but we need chapter 7 through 11. And we can actually customize the textbook that we are going to provide students with. And it's a customization that's only valid for our course, more than likely. But instead of it being $200, it can be closer to 60 to 70, or maybe even less. The content that is not necessarily, or the content that we've omitted that would have touched on subjects but doesn't quite go into it the way that we would want, we can supplement with open access resources or, different types of low cost resources. If, we are going to use, and this is the thing, that instructors don't like change. We get that, right? I don't like changing my courses so frequently. And I do so, right? But there's a big time investment. And one of the things that we do is we have all these great intentions of redoing a course for spring, but then spring comes and we just kind of revert to the syllabus that we used last spring. And in doing so, right, that can be a good starting point, right? We can look at if there is an updated edition of that textbook. If there is an updated edition of the textbook in which we require, are the edits so great that we actually need to change to the 2019 version, or can we still keep the 2017 version? If the edits are minimal, and then we can still supplement with additional resources. We don't have to mandate that students spend a $150 premium because it's a new version of the book, if at the end we're not going to change our test questions. So we need to start being a little bit more reflective as to the additions that we mandate from students. We need to actually look at the book and open it, right? And we need to go through the chapters and we need to determine, is this a good resource? And can they potentially use this resource for a future course? Is this going to be a source that they can refer to as they go on through their career? And again, we can supplement, right, any additional information with open education resources and low-cost resources. So I don't have a textbook in most of my classes. The only ones I have a textbook in are the ones that are mandated by the department. So do we really need a textbook, right? And my pass rate has always been, decent. My pass rate has been like between 92 and 94%. I recently redid most of my courses, and my pass rate now is between 97 to 98%. So I'm going to take full acceptance of that. And I'm going to say it's because I decided to go OER. And I'm making the resources available to the students, to everybody. And I don't have to worry about who didn't purchase the book or not. Is there a different type of resource that we can use and continue to supplement? So I teach a social and emotional development course, right? Do I need a book for that? Or can I use a behavior manual? Can I use a video? Can I use a combination? Can I use a book that talks about like the brain development in infants and toddlers, and it's not necessarily a textbook? And what's going to differentiate these materials one from the other a lot of times is that there's no test bank and like activity questions and objectives already laid out for us. But the content is typically the same. So if we're looking at brain structure, it's brain structure. I just don't have the objectives listed, I don't have the suggested activities, and I don't have the questions for the test bank. So it does require a little bit more work on our end, but it's like front loading, right? And then once we prepare these courses really well and we design the course, and then the students will be able to go through the course much easier because everything is aligning. Can we build the course content ourselves by selecting the content we need, right? OpenStax has, which is one of the resources that we'll go over in a little bit, but OpenStax has these textbooks. And in the textbooks, because they are open education and they're licensed for people to be able to take them and edit them, you can pick and choose the chapters that you want. So there's nothing preventing you from using like one OpenStax book and then maybe getting another resource from Merlot and creating the content that you need. And the reason why I like that is because I teach fourth-year education students, and my students are getting ready to sit down for the state exam and get tested. There's a lot of trends in education. There are a lot of trends, and the textbooks and the materials and the classroom management techniques don't necessarily apply to every group of students that's coming in. Secondly, we live in Miami, right? And if you have 5 different students in your class, you have 5 different races, ethnicities, cultural backgrounds, and the diversity isn't there. And one student last semester, she asked me, she's like, why does it matter what the white kids in Wisconsin are doing when we don't have any white kids in our class? Fair enough, right? Fair enough. So what I like about my courses and the materials I use is that I can bring examples from children all the way in China, right? I can bring examples from children in parts of India. I can bring examples from children in the Bahamas, in Jamaica, and Haiti. It doesn't really matter because development can be applied to all of these different cultural backgrounds. So I am able to get the content that I need and really personalize it, not so much for my course, but for my students. And they connect on a much deeper level with the content like that. Our library has phenomenal resources. And again, to be totally transparent, I didn't realize how useful our library was until I needed it, like for my own personal use. And I'm like, oh my God, we have that? We have like journals on journals on journals on journals. We have a ton of unlimited resources. I guess that would be redundant, right? Ton and unlimited, or... right? We're going to go with it. We're going to go with it. Yeah. We're going to have to edit the recording. But they do have like a lot of resources for us. Now, what does it require from us? Logging into the library website. It also requires us going to speak with the librarian. It requires us sifting through the material that they send us, because they won't just send us, hey, here's your course, right? They'll send us, so they're not subject matter experts, they're library experts, right? So they can't tell us how to design our course, but they can provide us the materials and we can begin to sift through and determine what's gonna work for us and what isn't, but that requires time, right? So redoing the course is typically not something you can do like a week before it launches. I've been there, I did it one time, yeah, and I think I wanted to jump in front of every moving truck. Every moving truck I wanted to be a victim of. So never again, right? Will I do that? But it can be done. But to sift through it, to sift through it takes time, and we need to be able to conceptualize the course. And there's something very liberating about removing the old syllabus that you've been using, because now it's in your hands to create this really amazing course. And I can create my assessments and my activities and my learner-to-learner interactions. I can create all of that. I just need the material for it. And that's what's going to take a lot more time. So in the little bit of interviews that I've done, right, as an instructional designer, I'm always asking them, like, what part of teaching do you like? Because we get so much negative feedback about, like, teaching, right? And I'm like, so what part of it do you like? And a lot of instructors actually like the designing of the assignments, the designing of the assessments, but they can't because they feel that they're bound to this textbook. When you remove that textbook, I feel it puts more power in the hands of the teacher. Like, now we can really engage in our craft. Now I can tell you how I want you to show me that you learned this. And it's very liberating. So here's our roadblock, right? Faculty are reluctant to redesigning courses, specifically with OER materials, because there's no data that supports some of these OER materials that we're using. At least the publisher went through we're hoping went through like a vetting process, right, for these textbooks. But the OERs, because we feel it's out in this like internet world, it's a little bit less valid. And that's just a perception. That's not necessarily truth. So sites like Merlot, when you publish your content onto Merlot, it goes through a peer review process. And there's a little indicator on the side that will tell you how many faculty peer reviewed your submissions. So these sites do go through a vetting process of the materials that are up there. Also, there's a liability. You can't say that you use something that was OER if it was open access. So they have to at least confirm that the licensing standards are appropriate and that they actually can be identified as OER material. The content selected, what is specific to your course, right? And it's specific to your assessments, it's specific to your students. We do a lot of times have to go back and write our course objectives. We do a lot of times have to go back and create our own exams if we have larger class sizes and we need to do the multiple choice exams, because that's really the only way that we can manage 300, 400 enrollment courses. But it's easier to maintain alignment, because what happens is that a lot of times we're determining when we go through the process of creating an OER course, right? We're not necessarily looking for content first and then we create our objectives. Everything is kind of done in reverse. We're looking at are there any mandates tied to this course? Are there any standards, any FIBs, any accrediting regulations? Is there anything tied to this course that I need to make sure to address? Well, those become our objectives. And we break them down. And as we break them down, we're creating our modules. So now we have our objectives, right? We have the modules that are created. They have to be taught in a certain pattern. So that's going to be the process of the course. But and then now we begin to decide, like, how am I going to even measure that they learned this? So inadvertently, we're going through the backwards design model. We're determining what they need to learn, how they're going to show me that they learned it. And then the last stage is actually finding the documentation, the research, the content to support that learning and to prepare them for success. So the alignment kind of happens on its own when you follow the processes for the designing the OER courses. And then, because everybody loves quality matters, right? We can make sure that all these different levels of interaction are present for the learner. And these different levels of interaction are not just like a quality matters thing. There's the community of inquiry framework that talks about the different levels of presence, and you have social presence, you have cognitive presence, and you have instructor presence. And the culmination of all these different presences is what leads to successful student learning. And these are those different, so the learner to learner, and there's an error here. Learner to learner would be the cognitive. Learner to, it just should say content would be the cognitive, and then, did I repeat? Yeah, okay, so the learner to learner is the social, the learner to content is the cognitive, and then the learner to instructor is the instructor presence. So where can I find OER? Everywhere, just Google and something pops up, and because it's open, you can take it, right? That seems to be the common understanding, but that's not accurate, right? So there's a difference between public domain, which is stuff that we search for and it comes up. Open access is stuff that is open to use, but you typically need some type of credentialing. So our library has open access for our students, but they need, in order to get it, they need to have an FIU student email or a staff email to be able to actually access the content. But when they do have those credentials, it's free. And then we have the open education resources, which is content that is specifically designated by licensing, typically by Creative Commons, that says you are able to take this content and you can manipulate it or you can share it with these parameters in place. YouTube, I did not know how to Creative Commons filter until I needed it. And it's actually pretty great. So you search in YouTube, whatever it is that you're looking for, you select your filter option. From the filter, you go down to Creative Commons, and the items that populate after that are open for you to use. You do have to kind of still be cognizant of the different parameters that are set by the licenses, because maybe you can use it and you can share it, but you don't have permission to mix it with other OER resources, or you can use it and you can share it, but you can't modify it. It has to be shown in the way that it was originally created. OpenStax, I think, is great, more so for like those courses that are typically required for students. So your chemistries, your biologies, your maths, there's a lot of resources there. I think English has, political science. There's a lot of different textbooks there that are available. And just because, so I teach social and emotional development, and just because I don't find a social and emotional development textbook doesn't mean that some of these books don't have additional resources that I can pull from. So let's not be limited to the discipline in which the book is saying. Let's kind of be creative and see if there's something there that we can use. Lumen Learning is pretty good also. Merlot is kind of like a search database. The problems that I have had with Merlot is that sometimes people are posting content that is not OER. Like you're being redirected to like the California Department of Education website. And you can use it, but it's not OER. So you just kind of have to double check and make sure that any resource you're using is, if you're going to designate your course as OER, it needs to have the correct licensing associated with it. Oasis has 52 different sources for OER and is developed by SUNY, and SUNY is phenomenal when it comes to, OER and the initiative. And then we have OER Commons, which is like a search database that pulls in from all of these different places. Affordability counts. Who knows what affordability counts is? It's the most phenomenal thing that's happened to FIU. So, yes, hence the phenomenalness of it happening to FIU. Right? And like sometimes it doesn't really matter. It's like our students. I don't really care why you did it as long as you did it, but eventually you'll catch on to the importance of it. And when we look at the data that is being pulled on students and on student behavior, it kind of makes sense to be aware, right? That a lot of our kids, half of our students are not going to have the textbook. And if there's a way that I can help counteract that, if for nothing else, for the ease of the discussions in the class that I'm trying to have with them, right? And then let me be more proactive. And affordability counts kind of, it's something that was started by my department, by FIU Online, and we're kind of giving like a structure, right? Like where to begin. So it does recognize faculty by giving you a medallion once your course has been looked through, and we can verify that the total cost of your materials is not more than $60 for a 3-credit course. I think it's $20 per credit. Right, Jackie? Yeah, $20 per credit. So $60 for a 3-credit course, $80 for a 4-credit course, and it goes up and down. So the $60 or the $20 is it's an arbitrary number. It's what has been determined to be fair for students. So there's no research that we've identified behind that. But you do get a medallion, and the medallion goes in your course. And I think the Honors College, right, Michael? You guys post it. And yes.
It's not just for online.
Um, it's not, right? It's not. It's not just for online courses. The best part is, right, that, you ready for the best part? Students chit chat. Students chit chat. So what happens, right? They find out that your course, they literally say, I didn't have to pay any money. No, my friend, you paid for tuition. But aside from that, right, you don't have to pay anything else. So your enrollment goes up. So if you're in a department where I also teach 3321, there are multiple people who teach 3321 in education, but my class gets full within 2 hours of opening both of my sections because I don't have a textbook. And I'm amazing. But aside from that, I don't have a textbook, right? So it's an incentive. I did my graduate program having like a young baby, and I know how expensive it is. And I was older. If I'm younger in my early 20s, and I had a child young, whether I'm male or female, right? I have the responsibility of a child, and I'm working and I'm doing all these things. So I really want to spend like $500, which is maybe 12 hours of work, right? For a good salary on a textbook. So the committee, so once you submit your course, right, the committee reviews it, we go over it, we make sure that the resource does not exceed the $60 if you're in a traditional 3-credit course. There are some limitations to this, like you can't be using a used book from Chegg because there's no way to make sure that all of the students are going to be able to access that used book. Digital is fine, the publisher packets are fine. As long as we're not exceeding that $60 and as long as everybody in the course can access it without limitation.
Is that just on the course material? Because more classes now are using proctoring that's costing the students money. Exactly. So there are other costs. Is this just looking at for all of the costs?
Have we reached a conclusion on that? Right. That was, yeah.
Yes, that's actually.
No, go ahead, because I know that had been debated for a little bit.
Environmental science department were really big on that. They actually went OER so that they could the students could afford
Right, because other conversations that we had been having were calculators. Right? If a math course requires a specific calculator or a specific software or application, does that count? Well, I mean, it should, because what we're looking at is any additional expense that the student has to have in order to take our specific course. Yeah. Well, Michael too. Yeah, all of us. And then what you do is you email your students, right? Both past students, because I do this, right? I email everybody. Guess what? The course changed. Tell your friends, right? You let the students know that this update was made to the course, because I know people who have not taken a class with a specific instructor that they like because they can't afford the book, or the instructor wants them to do an application or take a field trip and they're like, I can't afford that. So they may be missing out on a wonderful experience with you because they still feel that they just can't do it. Yeah. Also, it slows down how quickly students are moving through the system, right? It slows them down. Maybe they'll take 2 courses instead of 4, right? 1 instead of 2. We want to get them in and out. Isn't that the thing, like 4 years? In and out. Well, make classes cheaper, and I'm sure they'll get in faster. Get out faster. Any questions? I thought we had covered everything. I'm glad. Yes?
So, based on the earlier presentation by Apple, have you seen a lot of adoption of other types of technology, AR things? So is that adding cost value that it's giving?
I personally have not have not seen. I just did a massive amount of research in the K-12 setting because those are the ones that are going to come to us within the next few years. And I'm looking at the teachers and practices. And what I'm finding is that regardless of the availability of materials, regardless of the cost, the teachers themselves, the instructors themselves are not in a position where they know how to appropriately manipulate these types of integrations, these types of applications, but more so, they don't know the impact it can actually have on their personal curriculum. So I haven't seen a lot of the faculty that I work with, and I work with math, and math has amazing opportunities to do wonderful things, right? And we're not using it because we need the faculty to say yes. And there are so many borders, right, before they get to that yes that are all internal that I haven't even had an opportunity to see if the cost would be something that would be a hindrance or not.
What happens, we might have a lot of faculty who want to adopt new techniques, want to have their syllabus and their courses. But coming from someone who has done a lot of this, it takes so much freaking time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, back to what you were talking about, I revamped a 16-week and did affordability counts with OER. Yeah.
And you made it out alive.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Because I want to be as forward and an early adopter as possible. But that's just me. There aren't that many
Right.
of us who want to do it. So I'll tell you that the bonus really, I'm like, money? I'm there. But how, so then the challenge becomes, how do we get other faculty to do it, especially the ones who've been teaching a long time. I've been teaching for 3 years. So it's a little different. But it's about time. If you're teaching 4 courses or 3 or 5, time commitment. How do we that time commitment? That's where we got to put our thinking cap. How do we do that for faculty?
Well, I think that
So many course releases because there's still a need for the actual courses while they're being redeveloped.
But I think that our department is a great place to start with your instructional designers. You know what I'm saying? To let us know, hey, I want to go this route, right? And we can begin doing some of that footwork for you. We can get you connected to NBC Learn. We can get you connected to the library. But I think initially it's just showing interest, and I think
collaboration too with other
right.
faculty and similar.
Maybe we could go outside department and I'm for that, but you may not have early adopters in your department, but hook us up with
Right.
with people from other departments. And FIU Online is fabulous. I've known Michael for a long time. I love Natalie, my instructional designer. And maybe it's me. I like to do a lot of it by myself. I didn't know she was supposed to help me with stuff. I'm like, you are? I want to design it myself, and
Right.
she can fix the kinks.
But that's a dime a dozen, though. That's not common,
No.
right?
No, but we want more people.
Oh, you can't record it. Oh, well, now I don't even remember what the question was.
About adoption and collaboration. That's
Yeah,
what you were
adoption
discussing.
and collaboration. It takes a tremendous amount of time commitment on faculty. And for example, our department, I'm one of the few who is all about teaching. Most of them are tenure track. They've got research they've got to write. So my focus is a little different because I'm all about teaching and the methods and effective methods. How do we get the others on board? I know that's what today is all about, right? How do we do that? Already, my courses get filled just like yours. And my reviews, of course, are stellar. But we can't be the only ones, right? We want more people to come and join us.
I was saying maybe you have to promote it
you know, everything is also about branding,
Right.
personal branding. And once your students are asking for it, they may ask their professors for that as well. They may request it through the university. The university will put the pressure on faculty to do more in that respect or that regard. So I think it's a matter of upvoting something or
Well, we're
more
also
demand.
doing that. To your point, we're doing that. I'm on the provost initiative, the teaching project, evaluating teaching, and we're also trying to build that into self-evaluation of teaching methods through Panther 180. So there's parallel work going on, but I can already see it's called, I don't have the time to do
Right.
this. How do you, so I sit with our department chair and the assistant chair, and we're going to go and engage adjuncts, because we use adjuncts a lot in our department, and go that route.
You see, but the thing is, I guess when we talk about like perceptions and barriers, right? If the perception and the barrier is that we don't have time, if we were to address the time issue for you, are you still willing to do it?
So one of the things to think about is, can we, and this would be a conversation with the chairs, can we leverage summer, right? Is there the potential to have some funding set aside for the faculty members who are already doing this to be funded, and fund a faculty member who is not to work together in the summer to revamp a course?
Yeah, that would be
So
phenomenal.
that works. You know, there's usually not as many courses that are needed, but there's always a desire to have summer funding. So just a way to think about, you know, is that a way we can find the time?
Yeah, or a course release.
The problem with course release is that we need those classes.
Yeah.
We have students coming through, and to have a professor, especially as we're getting into larger courses, say, you know, I'm only teaching 3 this semester.
Right.
Well, there's now 150 students who aren't going to be able to get a course. Whereas in the summer, there's probably a little bit of
More leeway.
Exactly.
Phenomenal idea. I think we're done. All right, I think.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thanks, guys.